Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. It has been a thoroughly depressing past few days for political moderation. It started with a troubling speech on the Senate floor and then culminated with an absurd rally in Iowa. One was worse than the other, but both serve as perilous signs for those of us hoping for a world with bipartisanship where Washington can actually get things done. Let's start on Capitol Hill, where Thursday night Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer addressed a newly passed bipartisan extension of time to raise the debt ceiling. There was just a hint of cooperation in the Senate. And of course, that led Mitch McConnell and the other 10 Republicans who agreed to the delay to get lambasted by the far right. So rather than showing even a modicum of appreciation for the heat that Senator McConnell and the others were taking, the ranking Democrat celebrated that rare moment of harmonic convergence by bashing the other side.
Republicans played a dangerous and risky partisan game, and I am glad that their brinksmanship did not work. Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans insisted they wanted a solution to the debt ceiling, but said Democrats must raise it alone by going through a drawn-out, convoluted, and risky reconciliation process. That was simply unacceptable to my caucus. And yesterday, Senate Republicans finally realized that their obstruction was not going to work.
And you can see Joe Manchin there in the background, burying his head in his hands. Moments later, he blasted Schumer's speech, telling reporters outside the Senate civility is gone. Now, whether Republicans deserve blame for the showdown isn't the point. It's that Schumer's diatribe against the GOP, even after striking a temporary deal, just stoked the flames rather than trying to move forward. The 10 Republicans who signed on to this deal were accused of caving to the Democrats. Mitch McConnell had Sean Hannity and others calling for his head. And instead of putting out a welcome mat to try to move things forward, Chuck Schumer gave them a tongue lashing. No, he needs to appeal to the progressive base of the Democratic Party, which doesn't want to make compromises or do bipartisan deals. But Schumer's attempt to placate the far left was nothing compared to the out-and-out lunacy that we heard on Saturday night in Des Moines as former President Donald Trump addressed a throng of his supporters at a rally in the Hawkeye State and ratcheted up lies about the 2020 election.
All of these calamities are the direct, predictable, and disastrous consequence of a totally corrupt election. It's all because of the corrupt election. They rigged the election, and now, based on the rigged election, they're destroying our country. That's not a mandate, that's a destruction of our country. Remember, this is not about me being robbed of an election. This is about the American people having their country taken away from them. That's what it's really about.
Yeah, the former president's been singing this song for months now about how he actually won the election despite all the legal challenges, the state audits, the digging from journalists and his supporters alike, with no evidence of any kind of fraud found that would remotely change the outcome. But just as important were the people who were on stage with him. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds was in the House. So too were Republican House members Marionette Miller Meeks and Ashley Hinson. And then there was the 7-term Senator Chuck Grassley, who recently announced he's bidding for an 8th. And with his name on the ballot this time next year, the 88-year-old senator, moved by a sudden bout of the Trump spirit, dropped in to pay homage.
President Trump and I were proud to deliver for the hardworking people of Iowa and the United States, people just like you, policies that make a difference in the United States of America to continue America first.
Listen to that crowd. Listen to their tepid, late, pity applause. Much more befitting a golf tournament than a Trump rally. You can see it on his face. He's paining him to say some of these words. Maybe it's because on February 13th, right after the Senate voted to acquit the former president in his second impeachment trial, Grassley was speaking very differently about Donald Trump when he accused him of belittling and harassing election officials, encouraging his own, quote, loyal vice president Mike Pence to take unconstitutional actions, and of generally extreme, aggressive, and irresponsible rhetoric. Grassley clearly didn't want to be there. And yet there he was, standing in front of that crowd, saying things he doesn't seem to remotely appear to believe. Why?
I'm thrilled to announce tonight that Senator Chuck Grassley has my complete and total endorsement for re-election. Chuck.
And there's the payoff. Chuck Grassley had to be there based on where the Republican Party is heading. He had to join Donald Trump as he continues to undermine the U.S. electoral process and try to radicalize his base into believing that he actually won the 2020 election and set the stage for 2024, where, of course, if he runs and doesn't win, it will have been fraud as well. So it's hardly surprising that when this Trump supporter was interviewed, she was talking like this.
We're just sick of it, and we're not gonna take it anymore. I see a civil war coming. I do. I see civil war coming.
I am really, really worried about what's happening in this country right now. It's not all tit for tat, and the blame isn't always equal. With Democrats increasingly kowtowing to their more radical base, and Donald Trump continuing to dominate his party with an appeal to the fringes with fact-free rallies, how do the rest of us maintain hope that our government can do anything for us? I mean, literally, this weekend, I really started getting truly scared and angry. Joining us now is someone who has tried to bridge that partisan divide in Congress, Barbara Comstock. She's a former Congresswoman representing Virginia, served 2 terms as a Republican. Barbara, good to see you. Thanks for coming back on the show. Appreciate it. Do you share my fear? I mean, I hope what you're going to say to me is, Dan, you are vastly overstating this. Things aren't that bad. Please tell me that's your view.
Well, listen, certainly when you're talking about Donald Trump, there's never a bottom. So you always see worse and worse things with him. And I think with the January 6th commission in action, and I expect they will do things like hold Steve Bannon in contempt, I think you will continue to find out worse things about Donald Trump. But I think what you're seeing and what's going on here is, first with Chuck Schumer, he's got to worry about AOC possibly primarying him. He has to cater to his extremes, much like the Freedom Caucus and the House Republicans. He's got this AOC progressive group, Bernie Sanders. So, as Mitt Romney, I think, was very accurate when he said, there's times to be combative and there's times for grace. We need a lot more graceful politicians like Mitt Romney, like what I think Mitch McConnell was trying to do, and getting those 10 was not easy. And no wonder, you had, Senator Manchin with his head in his hands. That was an awful moment at a time when they were actually trying to work together. So, hope springs eternal. I certainly hope we go back to that. But the problem is the fringes are driving things. Joe Biden won, I think, first of all, because he wasn't Donald Trump, and second, because he ran as a moderate.
Right.
Now that he's in there, he has to be Joe Biden, the moderate that he said he was going to be, and he can't. That's why things are failing right now, and certainly a lot of incompetence is leading Republicans to go back to their, okay, well, here's where we got to go, and then the left, mad that they aren't winning. But you got to get back to that middle, because that's why Biden won.
So let me ask you this about Schumer. I mean, what do you think led him to do that? He obviously plotted and planned, right, to come up there and make that statement. And it just seemed insane to me. I mean, I was on the show sort of blasting those who were blasting McConnell. And yet, because I'm hoping, again, for somewhere in the middle, for compromise, bipartisanship, et cetera. And you would think that really what Schumer was doing there was really just trying to light a fire right there and just get people outraged again at a moment when there was just this little opportunity for bipartisanship.
Well, it wasn't expected. Certainly not by Mitch McConnell. And I don't think I had spoken to some Senate Republicans before that, and that is not what they were expecting. We did expect a little bit of a moment of grace and maybe, let's get back to maybe passing the infrastructure bill, because the whole nonsense about linking the infrastructure bill with the bigger bill has always been ridiculous, because the way you want to do things is, okay, let's get, actually, the infrastructure bill isn't just a single base hit. It's really kind of a double or a triple. $1 trillion bill is a pretty good thing. Then go back to the drawing board with the second piece and see if you can get a single or a double or what you can get. But linking the two is assuring mutually assured destruction, which is going to hurt Democrats. So I don't understand it, except for Chuck Schumer worried about his own skin in New York politics and worried about AOC and Bernie Sanders breathing down his neck.
Yep. I totally agree with you. And, you know, Barbara, we need more political leaders like you back in Congress. The problem is that when I know. I mean, why would you ever want to go through that? And the bottom line is, when you deal with a primary, this is what happens. And we're seeing the result of that. And it is really frightening for those of us anywhere near the middle. Again, left of center, right of center.
That people like Liz Cheney, like Adam Kinzinger, who actually are pretty conservative. I was conservative too. I never voted for a tax increase. I was for a strong national security. And so you have people like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, strong conservatives, who are saying you still have to get things done. I mean, the House and the Senate are 50-50. And when the country's 50-50, when you have 50-50 in the House and Senate, you've got to work together. That's just the math. And so these people on both sides who just refuse to acknowledge math, they're the ones who never get anything done, who never pass bills. Bernie doesn't pass bills, and Jim Jordan doesn't pass bills. It's the people who have those moments of grace. Mitch McConnell passes bills, gets people confirmed, and he knows how to do this. He's trying to work together here, and he doesn't have an election coming up in 2 years like Chuck Schumer does. So that's largely why Chuck is doing what he's doing.
So look, I mean, without getting into the details of each and every senator there, et cetera, the bottom line is that I think that those of us who are moderate are going to need to start getting more vocal and need to start expressing our frustration. I don't know where that leads us, but my goodness, this is just...
Reward the people who are trying to work together. Get out and say, hey, if you're in Wyoming, even if you're a Democrat, vote for Liz Cheney in the primary instead of whatever lunatic's going to be primarying her. Same thing with Adam Kinzinger. But then if you have a Marjorie Greene, go vote for her primary opponent or whoever's running against her, to get people like that out, because they aren't getting anything done.
Yeah. And this applies, by the way, to both parties. We just want, I mean, the majority of the country wants the moderates. Barbara Comstock, so great to have you. Great to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care.
Today, the first pill to treat COVID-19 is up for FDA authorization, but it turns out the politicized media may be responsible for delaying it by 6 months. Coming up. This morning, pharmaceutical giant Merck formally applied for FDA emergency use authorization for its groundbreaking COVID-19 antiviral pill, Molnupiravir. No, I don't think I pronounced that correctly. But it's roughly that pronunciation. It turns out we could have had this as early as 6 months ago. So how does a drug that can save thousands of lives slip through the cracks during a global health nightmare? Well, it turns out our hyper-partisan media may be to blame. In 2020, the mainstream media picked up the story of a whistleblower accusing the Department of Health and Human Services officials of cronyism, trying to promote a, quote, potentially harmful drug for some unspecified personal gain. Many in the media hailed the whistleblower, named Rick Bright, as a hero who'd taken a principled stance in defense of science against the snake oil salesman of the Trump administration.
Dr. Bright says he also resisted efforts to, and I quote him here, fund potentially dangerous drugs promoted by those with political connections. This is just the latest example, the president putting his own very short-term political interests over the broad health and safety of the American people.
Dr. Rick Bright is the highest-ranking government scientist to charge the federal government's response to the coronavirus pandemic has been slow and chaotic. He says it has prioritized politics over science and has cost people their lives. It has cost Dr. Bright his job.
He sounds like he's the casualty, Anderson, of the president's war on scientists, war on science.
Except that HHS officials were first briefed on Merck's antiviral pill in October of 2019, months before the pandemic began. By the spring of 2020, Trump administration officials were reportedly ready to spend $100 million developing the drug as a possible treatment for COVID, but the bright supporters in the media never provided the context. Now the drug has been released with studies that indicate it reduces the risk of hospitalization or death from COVID-19 by around 50%. Didn't take long for many in the mainstream to start changing their tune on the antiviral itself. But by the third day of the Merck miracle drug news cycle, there was a new wrinkle in the mainstream media coverage. Mentions of the drug nearly all came paired with a warning or stern reminders that vaccines, not therapeutics, are at the top of the medicinal food chain.
Talking to non-vaccinated folks across the country, as I have over the last year plus, are you worried this could fuel the unvaccinated because they say, well, I'm fine, there's a pill that can treat me if I get COVID?
And this is what former FDA chief Dr. Scott Gottlieb said about it on CNBC today.
There was a focus on the vaccines, and there wasn't enough focus on the therapeutics and trying to get the available manufacturing. That's where the government really could have played a role.
Right, exactly. Both sides have these weird political interests in this particular drug. Some on the right have this odd affinity for ivermectin, a drug that has been used in humans to treat infections caused by some parasitic worms, head lice, skin conditions, as a COVID cure. But no credible medical data to date has shown it helps at all with COVID. In fact, it's not even an antiviral drug. But that hasn't stopped more conspiracy-minded folk, including, of course, Alex Jones's InfoWars, from claiming that Merck's new antiviral pill is just ivermectin with a new name and some far-flung plot to appease those on the left and the mainstream media. It's all led to the same thing. Unnecessary death in the midst of a global pandemic. Overly tribal politics have caused a drug with the potential to save countless lives to be delayed for no good reason. The bottom line is that we, the rest of us, who don't consume our COVID news through a political prism, should be outraged that this drug has been delayed or marginalized or maligned based on agendas rather than medical data. Journalist Matt Taibbi has a terrific in-depth story in his Substack, TK News. He's also the co-host of the Useful Idiots podcast. Matt, thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate it. This really was a terrific article, and then you did a follow-up to the article as well. Just give us a little history here. You know, I've used the phrase 6 months, it may have been delayed. Talk to us about how that delay may have occurred.
Well, I think you summarized it well. Originally, the manufacturers of this drug came to the Trump administration in late 2019. There was some initial interest, but no commitment at that time. Then when the pandemic hit in February of 2020, there was a mutual interest, and the HHS, in particular, a doctor named Robert Kadlec, wanted to proceed with a lot of funding for this drug, molnupiravir, which is very hard to pronounce. You're right. But this coincided just sort of unhappily and randomly with this bureaucratic infighting episode that had taken place where this whistleblower named Rick Bright from a group, an agency that's subordinate to HHS called BARDA, went public and said that he had a series of complaints about the Trump administration's handling of the COVID disaster. And so this drug just sort of got caught up in a series of public scandals, like including the hydroxychloroquine issue, the lack of preparedness on masks. And it was just sort of immediately accepted that this was bad science and a bad drug. And as a result, the government decided not to fund this drug, and we could have had it a lot earlier.
And I'm very interested in your focus on the media in this, about why the media ran with this whistleblower complaint, as we played some clips there, as if it was gospel.
Well, look, this has been a pattern throughout the Trump years, and as a journalist, it's been a very difficult time for me just watching all this happen. But it's a very predictable pattern. Like, just to take an example, as soon as Donald Trump said that he was taking hydroxychloroquine, both sides in the media immediately fell into camps where the sort of right-wing media was immediately saying it was a miracle cure, but equally ignorant and ridiculous was the conclusion of the people in the mainstream media, which is sort of where more my side of the aisle, where they immediately concluded that it was snake oil. I mean, neither really had any evidentiary basis in the first breadths of that news story. We just sort of divide up these stories based on who's on what side of the narrative, not based on the science or what the facts are. Most journalists don't really know anything about scientists, so we're just sort of going on what we hear from our sources, and we tend to do this just based on things that have nothing to do with real evidence.
Yeah. All right, Matt Taibbi, your article and your follow-up is well worth a read on his Substack, TK News. It's actually how I became aware of all this. So while I seem really smart in doing my introduction here, my introduction to this story came from Matt Taibbi, so we're really clear on this. Matt, thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks very much, Dan.
From hashtag Oscars so white to what may now be the overcorrection, the new boxes filmmakers are going to have to check literally if they want their movie to be considered for Best Picture by the Academy. Welcome back. It is no secret that for years the Oscars has been trying to avoid being accused of being too white and too male. But now it seems they're going to almost absurd lengths. Last year, the Academy announced new diversity standards for Best Picture nominees. They'll be mandatory starting in 2024 for filmmakers who want their films to be considered for Best Picture. Now we're getting our first look at the so-called inclusion form. The document, released by founding partner of Puck News, Matthew Bellany, filmmakers have the option to submit the confidential form at least this year, but starting in 2024, there'll be diversity requirements. This document will have filmmakers label their employees who are from, quote, underrepresented groups. Those groups include women, people of color, people who identify as LGBTQ+, or people with disabilities. There will be 4 broad categories on screen: the crew, the studio team, the interns. At least 2 of those 4 groups will have to meet certain inclusion standards on diversity. To understand how we got here, to the point where to be considered for Best Picture, you have to hit quotas. Let's go back in time for a second. On January 15, 2015, the Academy awarded all 20 Best Acting nominations to white actors. This created the online social media campaign with the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite. Despite the movement, the same would happen again in 2016, sparking more outrage. But in the years since 2016, things have improved. Look at the Oscars this past spring, 9 of the acting nominations going to people of color. So my take is this is beyond an overcorrection. Do the Oscars have a history that lacks diversity? Yes. But the way to address that, to me, is in the people who make up the voting bloc, not to force directors and producers of any movie about any topic to adhere to somewhat random diversity requirements to even have their film considered. The Oscar for Best Picture the year before the Oscars So White movement in 2014 was 12 Years a Slave. Plus, in the years since, Moonlight and Green Book have also won the award. Does that mean there's no diversity issue? No, but this feels like a bizarre way to solve it. Joining me now to discuss is the reporter who released that inclusion document, founding partner of Puck News, former editor of The Hollywood Reporter, Matthew Bellany. Matthew, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
No problem. Hi, Dan.
All right, so explain to us first about this form and about what it means and what it doesn't mean. It's not mandatory for now, but is this the same form that they will be using in 2024? Is this a test balloon? What is this form that you uncovered?
So, first of all, it is mandatory now. It's just not going to be held against you if you don't qualify above the certain threshold. So you do have to fill it out if you want to be considered for Best Picture. But this is a test. They're trying to see how this is going to work, whether people are actually going to do it, how they're going to ascertain the diversity levels of their films. And then based on that, they're going to refine the process and hopefully be able to launch something that is required in 2024. And what it does essentially is it asks each producer, and the studios will likely fill this out, if you believe you have a diverse person in your cast, crew, below the line, anybody associated with the film, you enter them into essentially a database that says this person is Black, Latinx, white, whatever the racial makeup is. Then you ask whether they are LGBTQ+. You ask whether they identify as someone with a disability. And based on all that, they will begin to put together a profile of what that film looks like.
But again, to be clear, do they have to answer all these questions? I mean, some of these questions, in any other context might seem like personal questions. Not all of them, but some of them. Do they have to answer all of these questions to be considered?
It's voluntary right now, and they're going to figure out how to do that because obviously there are legal issues. I had filmmakers emailing me today saying, I'm not asking anybody about their sexual orientation. That is a personal matter. I don't want to get into that.
Right. That's exactly what I would have thought the response is. And you, having a legal background, probably recognize that is a potential concern, right? Is that suddenly that these requirements are potentially creating legal issues for the directors and the producers.
Potentially there. Now, the Academy is a nonprofit organization, and it has been sued in the past about the criteria for the Oscars. And essentially, as a private arts organization, a court ruled that they can set the ground rules for Best Picture however they like. But when you have producers and others at the studio potentially asking people personal information like that wouldn't be allowed in a job interview, let's say, that's potentially problematic. But they are working with all of the studios to figure out a way to do this in a way that will lessen the legal liability potentially as much as they can.
All right, I want to do this. If you can just stick around for a second, I want to take a quick break. But Matthew Bellany is one of the best connected people in Hollywood. So I want to know if the filmmakers are going to rebel against this, if there's going to be resistance, if they're concerned, though, if they rebel, are they going to get in trouble for that? Take a quick break. Matthew Bellany coming right back with us in a moment. Welcome back. We're back with Matt Bellany, who is the founding partner at Puck News, who uncovered the first form that if you want to be considered to win an Oscar for Best Picture, you're going to have to fill out this form and check all those boxes about what various people on your staff of the movie, of the film, fall into. And Matt, before the break, I was asking what filmmakers in Hollywood are telling you about this. I mean, I've got to believe that they're not happy on the whole about having to fill out a form like this.
No, I've received some negative feedback, and there is a chatter amongst the community that this is an overreach and going a little bit far. But take a step back and consider where the Academy was 5 years ago. This is an organization that was about 90% white and about 77% male. So they knew they had to do something desperate to diversify this organization, and they are getting the brunt of the criticism of the entire industry. So it makes sense that they would try dramatic measures to fix this problem.
But it seems to me that the solution is in the Academy, right? I mean, change the makeup of the Academy. You're right. The Academy shouldn't be that white and that male. That's the solution. So you have people from diverse backgrounds who are the ones actually doing the voting.
Here's the problem, though. If there is no pipeline for those people to get enough credits and to be in the mix on movies and be invited into the Academy, then there's not going to be anyone to fill those roles. So you have to start somewhere. And the feeling is, if you can get people to start thinking about those hires, and hey, if you're going to have an all-white crew, you're not going to be eligible for Best Picture, maybe you'll put some diverse people into the mix, and ultimately those people will be eligible to join the Academy.
Well, just maybe it's my ignorance on how you join the Academy. What do you have to do to get in the Academy?
You have to be invited by certain members, and then you have to be voted on, and you can get in through that. And once every year, the Academy announces the members from each different branch. So it's up to the different branches to add people.
But again, they can do that, right? I mean, they could do, they can allow people in. They can suggest people to include, et cetera. The notion that they simply don't have any people to consider for the Academy sounds to me, and again, you know this better than I do, but it sounds to me like a cop-out on the part of the Academy.
Well, that's a good argument, except I would say that the Academy has been very aggressive in finding diverse people to add to the ranks over the past 5 years, so much so that they've been criticized for abandoning the meritocracy, that it's supposed to mean something when you are invited into the Academy, and people with fewer credits have been admitted over the past few years in order to boost the diversity stats. There aren't going to be as many people to invite in if you don't start at the filmmaking process itself and get people the credits they need to be considered for the Academy.
I hear you, but it seems to me that there are other possible solutions here. Matthew Bellany, again, I highly recommend his Puck News subscription. I have it. I find myself obsessed with what he says each time he releases it, and I highly recommend you get it as well. Matthew, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Drop the rifle! An elementary school. It is an all-out manhunt to find the suspect and stop the shooting. Sean Sticks Larkin joins us live to talk us through this insane hours-long standoff. Welcome back. Time for our police cam segment where we show you the dangers police officers face every day. Tonight we're getting a look at the search for a suspect who shot at officers in a residential neighborhood in Daytona Beach, Florida, putting police and people who live there in potential danger.
Delta 11 Central. Possible gunshot, rear. Unknown if it's in the backyard or behind it.
It sounded like it was coming from that street over.
Yeah, he's reaching for something. He's reaching for something. Hands up! Put your hands now! Don't shoot unless you have a target.
Nope, I don't have nothing.
Show me your hands! Oh, just shut up! C4! Round just hit about 4 feet in front of me. Hug that.
You okay?
I don't think I'm hit.
Police were patrolling in a neighborhood and saw an open garage door. While they were investigating that, they heard a gunshot. Then the suspect, Joseph Janes II, fired more shots at officers. Janes hid in the woods near an elementary school for hours, periodically firing at police. He was shot in the leg and eventually surrendered as the sun was coming up. Look at that. That's when he finally surrendered. The incident, took hours. Janes is charged with 10 felony counts of aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer. Fortunately, no one was hurt. Retired Tulsa Police Lieutenant Sean Sticks Larkin joins us now to break it down. Sticks, thanks for coming back. Police were checking on an open garage door when they were shot at. First, take us through the process of looking for a gunman like that in a residential neighborhood.
I'm going to say this. This is police work. You're out on one call, which you think is, dang, nothing's going on. And then something like this happens. You're in a gun battle with an armed suspect. What's difficult about this is the suspect is out in an open area. He's in a large field. There's very little what we call ballistic cover for the officers to get behind. They have concealment, which basically hides the officers, but doesn't provide any type of ballistic safety. So what they essentially want to do, they're very fortunate. They have a lot of officers, as you can see right there. When this thing starts off, they're able to coordinate with other officers, and they want to establish a perimeter. Hey, we've got an armed guy out here shooting at officers. He's obviously a threat to us. He's a threat to the public. We need to contain him. We need to make sure he can't get out of this perimeter, potentially ambush an officer, which actually happened this week in another part of the country. There was an officer killed on one of these same type of scenarios. And obviously you don't want to let him get into somebody's house. You don't want him to take a hostage either.
Yeah, now this is someone the police department knew. Officers were called to the neighborhood multiple times earlier that weekend because apparently he'd been arguing with a roommate. Does that change anything in terms of the way the officers proceed in this kind of incident?
Sure. You know who you're dealing with. Initially, the officers, I'm sure, don't know who the suspect is, but once they develop intel, they know who they're dealing with. They know what his criminal history is like. Does he have mental health issues? Is he a substance abuser? There may have been one of the officers who's dealt with him before that has rapport with him and can try to, get this dialogue going to get him to peacefully surrender. On the flip side,
I think we may have lost Sean Larkin there. Well, that's what happens, unfortunately. Let me play again in case, well, can we play that, the sound again of the bullet? Because that was the part where I had actually asked about what I heard. So this is an officer saying a bullet landed 4 feet from him after the suspect shoots. Let's listen again.
Hands up! Put your hands now! Don't shoot unless you have a target.
Nope, I don't have nothing.
Show me your hands! Oh, you saw that. Cease-fire! 11 Central, second round of shots fired. He just fired around at me and the units. Round just hit about 4 feet in front of me. Hug that. You okay? I don't think I'm hit.
You heard him say a round just landed 4 feet in front of me. This went on for hours, this standoff. And one of the things I was going to ask Sean about as well is, as time goes on, how, you have to stay absolutely 100% engaged in a situation like this. I mean, this lasted, I think it was 7 hours. So that is another challenge for the police department there in Daytona Beach, and kind of amazing that no one ended up being injured in the incident. All right. I'm sorry we lost Sean Larkin. As always, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it. When we come back, more groaning tonight over propaganda machine OAN and the role AT&T played in its formation. We took it on last week. So did CNN, which may surprise some because AT&T owns them. But don't celebrate their bravery just yet. There's more to the story. I'm queuing up the clips in tonight's Mediaite Moments coming up next. Time now for our Mediaite Moments, where we check in on the day's bias, buzz, and the bull in the world of cable news and beyond. Last week, Reuters broke big news that AT&T was basically funding the fledgling conspiracy cable news outlet OAN, a channel dedicated to promoting baseless storylines about COVID and the 2020 election, with some of its so-called reporters actually working for the Trump campaign and the recount effort. We covered the story last week, and we were not alone. CNN covered it, but they also included the following disclosure.
A new Reuters investigation based on a review of court records reveals that OANN has flourished thanks to financial support from a surprising mainstream source, AT&T. Yes, the same AT&T that owns Warner Media, the parent company of CNN.
You would think it's incredibly brave that CNN would be covering this controversial story about their own parent company.
It's weird because AT&T is so supportive of the work at CNN, where we report the news, and we have been fighting off this wave of conspiracy theories and lies. It's dispiriting to know that they're doing this.
Before I play more of what might seem like a valiant effort from CNN reporters to hold their parent company to account, let me give you a clue. There's more to this story.
Court documents reviewed by CNN show that CNN's parent company, AT&T, played a key role in both creating and financing the network.
Okay, so listen, I have to note here that AT&T is the parent company of CNN.
We should note that AT&T is CNN's parent company.
One would think beating up on their parent company is dangerous business, even if the underlying target is an easy one to criticize, because they do air some insane stuff.
What are the consequences for traitors who meddled with our sacred democratic process and tried to steal power by taking away the voices of the American people? What happens to them? Well, in the past, America had a very good solution for dealing with such traitors: execution.
But there's one critical detail that CNN failed to share that makes beating up on their parent company or holding them to account far less risky.
Well, a mega deal in the media industry, and it's news that does involve CNN this morning. AT&T announcing it will combine CNN's parent company, Warner Media, with Discovery, creating a new standalone media giant. The deal would merge assets that include the likes of CNN, HBO, HBO Max, TNT, TBS, Discovery, HGTV, the Food Network, and a lot more.
It's more than that. Discovery's about to be the new boss at CNN, not AT&T, and their reporting would perhaps be seen as a bit less noble and principled if they'd also disclosed that. But hey, why ruin a perfectly good opportunity to seem like media heroes? That's our wrap-up of the day's media bias, buzz, and bull, our Mediaite moments. That does it for tonight. News Nation Prime starts right now. See you tomorrow.